Our next speaker tonight, to me, really sort of defines the word courage. We think about that in a lot of ways in the military audience that we've all given parts of our lives to. We tend to think of courage on the battlefield, and that's certainly one part of courage. But I think the other part of courage is how you live your life, how you carry on your life after you've had adversity, after you've been injured, after you've been wounded severely. And our next speaker is Major Scott Smiley, and I think he really, to me, defines that courage. He's an active duty United States Army, and we'll hear from Scott. And then after Scott talks, we'll hear from, well, I guess he's one of those, they always say, man that needs no introduction. It'll be Franklin Graham following up. So, Major Scott Smiley.
Thank you. It's an honor to be in front of you all this evening. It's a great place. The Cove is I couldn't ask for a better place to be here. And I first want to thank you all, men and women who have served and given so much for our great country. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you all. So thank you all for all you've given. I'd like to share a little bit about my life and some of the struggles and trials and great things that I've seen. And so if you wouldn't mind, imagine yourself with me on Mount Rainier. We're at Camp Paradise, a little over, I think, 7,000 feet. Sun's out, it's beautiful. We start the climb. Going through gravel rocks, end up being stone steps, we step up. Little squirrels are running across, birds are chirping, fresh pine in the air. Couldn't ask for a more beautiful day to climb. We start entering snowpack. Lifting your legs a little harder, gets a little more arduous and difficult, but we keep heading up. We all pass Pebble Creek. Luckily, none of us fall in. Be kind of cold. We keep chicaning our way up the mountain, finishing the day at Camp Muir, which is located at 10,000 feet. The next day, we practice being tied in together and sit around the campfire around 9 o'clock at night, warming still snow for our climb the next day. The lead climb guide ends his brief. All right, get some sleep. Wake you up at 11. We'll get climbing at 12. As I'm heading back to the tent, pumped, excited to get well over 12 hours of sleep, my friends laugh at me. Scotty, it's called alpine sleep. What's that? It means we're getting up in 2 hours. We're getting climbing at midnight. And it's those times you really wish people use military time. Difference between 23 and 24. Well, we again couldn't have had a better evening to climb. The stars were out, the moon was shining. It was just gorgeous. We all have lamps on our foreheads to see where we're going. We again continue to traverse our way up the mountain. And just as we pass through Disappointment Cleaver, this huge rock, difficult face, I realize my calves are dead tired. My quads, my core, my arms. And I'm just exhausted. We'd stop every hour and a half to 2 hours just to rest. As I'm sitting on my backpack, the lead climb guide comes over and asks me how I'm doing. I look up to him and say, I don't think I can make it. I honestly don't think I can make it to the top. Well, I rewind several years earlier to say I was raised in a very large family. 3 brothers, 3 sisters. Yes, with my parents it's 9. That is a military squad. And it was war on the home front. Whether it's fighting for my food, stabbing someone in the arm for stealing something I desired, having my new clothes worn at school before I got to wear them. It was hard, especially me being the 3rd oldest, 2 older brothers. Competitive and competition was rampant through our household. I pushed myself, though, trying to get physically fit, mentally stronger, always trying to beat my older brothers. And it just pushed me to have higher heights and imagine what I could do in life. As my high school years began to come to a close, I had to make a decision. Did I want to join a business out of high school, or did I want to attend college? In the end, I ended up choosing to attend the United States Military Academy located in West Point, which I did know had a service obligation of 5 years of active duty in the United States Army. And in my mind, I thought, yeah, no problem. Get a college degree, get out of the Army, get rich, get some money, live a good life. It was cool to me. So I headed on, I think my only one-way flight a basket of tears, leaving my mom, my dad, my family, not really knowing what life would bring. And just as we landed in Newark, New Jersey, rushed up to West Point, New York, where many of you remember, head shaven, gray shirt, shorts halfway up my thigh, black socks up to my knees. Some of you are imagining what I look like. Yes, I was a dork. But luckily, we all looked the same. And as you know, they were breaking us down to our most minimum. But every day, stress has increased. Memorizing the front page of the newspaper after we delivered to the upperclassmen. I kind of thought, did these individuals not know how to read? Why do we have to memorize the front page? Announcing the minutes. How many minutes until formation? Again, do we not know how to tell time around here? Did I make a good decision? But it was just constant memorization. And memory is not something I've always necessarily done well in. And I remember moving out down the hallway, delivering a piece of laundry to upperclassmen. And again, I'm this 210-pound, twisted steel, sex appeal guy. Like, I'm a stud, at least at that time in my own mind. And a female stops in front of me. She says, "Halt, new cadet." I'm like, "Yes, ma'am. Where are you going?" "I don't know." And she's like, "Is that one of your 4 responses? Am I a man?" I'm like, "No, no, Sergeant." And I just start crying. Like, I've been broken. Like, and yes, I am embarrassed right now. But it's the truth. Like, the stresses of life had just gotten to me. Like, I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know, if I could survive the day. And after she, I'm sure, picked her jaw off the ground in shock and awe, she looked at me and said, "Listen, if the small, insignificant amount of stress that we're imparting on you right now is too much, the United States Army is too much for you. Because lives are going to be put on the line. And you're going to be in charge of men and women in which you're going to be responsible for their lives. So if this is too much, you may need to reconsider where you're at and what you're doing. So go back to your room and fix yourself." And so I did. I'm sure I picked my tears up and moved out down the hallway to my room. And I thought, nothing in my life's the same. My parents aren't there. My family's not there. I have no friends. I have no one to talk to. But I recalled I did still have one thing. You see, I was raised as a Christian, and I had my Bible. That was one thing that they allowed me to keep, was my Bible. And one of the first verses that my parents read to me at a very young age was John 3:16, where Jesus says to a man in a dark alley who is scared to talk to him, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but will have everlasting life." And it gave me rejuvenation that I still had God. But I didn't think God understood the stress that I was going through. Like, I had to memorize things. Like, I was scared. And so I kept reading. I opened up the book of Philippians, where Paul, a disciple of Christ, describes, "I've been beaten. I've been well off. I've been starving. I've been well fed. I've been tired. And I've had well sleep. I've had plenty of sleep. But I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." And those words just motivated me and inspired me. It's like, man, I'm not getting beat here. Maybe mentally, like I'm stuffed if I can actually eat something because I'm so nervous. I sleep decently well. Of course, 4 hours is not plenty of sleep for me. But I realized it was my choice. I had to choose what I wanted to do. As a result, I chose to stay at the military academy. And those 47 months at the military academy flew by, making great friends and joining the United States Army in 2003, becoming a second lieutenant. And I was pushed off to Fort Benning, Georgia, where I received training. And then my first duty station, which was 1st Brigade of the 25th Infantry Division in Fort Lewis, Washington. I received a 45-man platoon. And that female, years earlier, was right. Responsibility increased drastically. Counseling and me getting counseled, those were scary moments. But I realized that I did have a purpose. But just as soon as we got there, we received orders to deploy to Mosul, Iraq, northern portion of Iraq. And being newly married, I had to bring that news home to my wife, not even being married a year. Sorry, honey, I'm going to leave for 12 months. Well, when can you come home? In 12 months? It was hard. Again, a lot of tears, a lot of misunderstanding, not understanding what my duty and job description was. And just like you all know, it's to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And so I headed off. Basket of tears on October 14th of 2004 to Mosul. And many like you, all you here, we helped rebuild the country, redistributing electricity, gasoline, helping rebuild schools. I remember going into schools and literally holes in the ceiling, softball size. The chalkboards on the wall curled away just because of the few times it had rained. It was sad to see the devastation and just the poverty there. But we were helping rebuild it. But every day, we were attacked. Improvised explosive devices, snipers, rocket-propelled grenades, mortars. And on December 21st of 2004, the day after my first anniversary, a suicide bomber walked into the Mosul mess hall and blew himself up, killing 22 people, men and women, one being my company commander, Captain Bill Jacobson Jr. Talk about devastation. Talk about tears. Talk about asking why. Why this life? Why are we here? What are we doing? But I had to rely on what we were doing and what our job description was and focus on the job ahead. Because striking out in anger and resentment, I knew wouldn't do me or anyone else any good. And so we continued forward. The months passed. Almost at my 6-month mark, it was April 6th of 2005. We received orders to find a suicide car bomb. One would think, well, that's pretty easy. Well, in a city of 2 million people, when hundreds of thousands of cars, it's a needle in a haystack. Well, my company commander and I headed out to the city. He told me to stay off the main supply routes, obviously the avenues of approach that most likely these would occur. As I pushed my way through the rural area of town, came up on a street and found a suspicious vehicle where the back end of the car was lower than the front. Meant a couple things. Either something heavy's in the back, good or bad, or he needs new suspension and shocks. Given the rules of engagement, you can't just shoot someone because you're scared. If that was the case, a lot of us would be in trouble. Well, I made a decision. I thought the best decision I could make and cordon him off. Being in my striker vehicle, I pulled 30 yards just to the south. I was facing east on the road, the same road he was on, and he was facing west on the northern side of the road. Nothing in between us, 30 meters away. I parked 2 other striker vehicles in front of him, about 75, 100 meters away. And I yelled at him to get out of his vehicle. This man, head was buzz-shaven, face was buzz-shaven, good-looking guy, gray shirt down to his sleeves, down to his wrists, looked over his left shoulder at me, raised his hands off the steering wheel, and shook his head no. Me feeling protected in my striker vehicle, metal all the way up to my name tape, defilade, helmet on, sunglasses on, bulletproof, yelled at him again. He responded in the same way, shaking his head no, and then he pulled his foot off the brake. I raised my M4 up to my shoulder, fired 2 rounds in front of his vehicle, then boom, my world went black. I woke up 2 weeks later in Walter Reed Army Medical Center, blind the rest of my life. One eye was taken out, the other eye was shown shut because of the metal that was in it. And the right side of my body was partially paralyzed as I was missing a quarter of my skull due to the swelling of the metal of my brain as a result of the metal entering it. But my life didn't just go physically black. It also went spiritually black. I no longer trusted in God. I didn't have a clue why. I didn't have a clue why something this bad could happen to me. what did I do wrong? How was I wrong? Where did I mess up? Why do I deserve this? I couldn't see any result or rhyme or reason why. I didn't understand. But my wife, she was there, loving me every day, reading the Bible to me, saying prayers, massaging my feet. Yes, I do miss the massages. It's been a few years. My friends, my family were there. The army was there. People were loving me. People were supporting me. I was being loved. And I quickly realized that the depression that I was in, the dark hole, not just physical, but mental and spiritual, was because of a choice that I had made. That I didn't want to forgive. And until I came to the conclusion, making the decision that I was going to forgive the man who blew himself up, disintegrating himself and his car into billions of pieces, I knew it was the only way that I could live life. Live life freely. Live life not in hatred and not in anger. And it was hard to do that, but I did it. But most importantly, I had to ask God to forgive me for denying him. And once I made that decision, my life began to turn around. Yeah, it was still hard. I was still depressed. I was still blind. Still couldn't see anything. I still can't see anything. I had to rebuild my relationship with my wife. The person that loved me the most, guess what? I was the meanest to her. For no reason other than I knew she loved me. And I began my recovery. Only being in Walter Reed for a couple months, pushed out to Palo Alto, California, to the Blind Rehabilitation Center, where I began to learn how to live as a blind man, using a stick, learning how to use my computer again, learning how to cook, learning how to live life as an independent individual. And as I began to want to be more independent, want to be the same person I was, I remember asking the VAs, like, you know, life is getting kind of boring here. Do you guys have a gym or something? Like, I can get my swole on? Like, they laughed like all of you did. I think I had to define what I meant by getting swole. And they finally showed me the route to the gym. And they never let me walk by myself until they realized that I knew the route. And finally, probably on the first or second day, I was able to walk by myself. In the afternoon, I headed out the door, hit a little mat they had on the sidewalks that told us there was intersections. I took a left. Entered the alleyway, always fearful, because you never know where you are. Made the opposite side of the sidewalk. Made the first right. Made the first left. Gym was right ahead. Well, after a good half an hour, 45 minutes of getting my swole on, unfortunately, not hydrating, not drinking, make sure you guys drink water, I realized the blind center was only 30-second, max 1-minute walk away. Of course, I had to enter into the 95-degree Palo Alto, dry heat, dry sun, but I didn't think of anything of it. So I exited the gym, took my first right, took my first left, kind of scared of the alleyway, successfully crossed the alleyway. Then I'm smiling, all I'm waiting on this mat. No mat. Still no mat. I increased the arc of my stick a little wider, make sure I'm getting all sides of the sidewalk. No mat. And finally I realized I'm lost. I don't know where I am. And like you all, when you're lost, you backtrack. Let me tell you, when a blind guy backtracks, it's a blind guy backtracking. I stayed lost. Now not sweating, just because of me being so dehydrated, realizing, I've survived a suicide car bomb. I've survived tons of firefights. How am I going to lose my life in a blessed, dry Palo Alto hot sun? And I threw my stick down in anger, crying out to God, why? Why me? Why this life? And I honestly never think it should have been that question I should have asked. But it should have been what? What am I going to do now, Lord? how am I going to live this life? And how am I going to impact people in a positive way, in a positive manner, in which I never could have done before? Because just me trying to find the blind center paled in comparison to me making the decision to stay on active duty, to still continue to serve our country. And as I did that, I found relevance in the life. I found relevance in what I did every day, and rebuilding my relationship with my wife, and it's definitely rebuilding my relationship with the Lord. And it brings me back to Mount Rainier. You see, I'm blind. I'm blind on this mountain. And I'm trying to be another independent individual who's doing it all themselves. In that same verse, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. If it's his will, I was going to make it to the top. But I couldn't just trust myself. I had to abide by the guide, doing the French step, doing the correct step, not using all my energy. And after 13 hours, starting at midnight, I finally summited Mount Rainier at 14,410 feet and literally felt like I was on top of the world. It was awesome. So in closing, I want to encourage you all here. You've given so much. You've given so much to this great country. The purpose that you have given is there. But don't focus on the physical struggles, the mental struggles, the spiritual struggles. You have to trust in God. You have to know that God will bring you through. I know that we will all be able to do all things through Christ who gives us strength. Thank you so much.